Do you feel that your business is just sucking up a lot of your time with repeat tasks that you wish you didn't have to do? And things like appointment reminders, email follow-ups, and all the other things in between. Let alone that feeling that you may have leads falling through the cracks. I'm Sean Wynett, one of the hosts of this upcoming podcast and founder of Blue Cow Marketing. Both Jody, my co-host, and I help clients overcome these challenges. We're both social media experts and certified Keep professionals. Now, if you haven't heard of Keep, it's an amazing tool that helps you and your business get organized, follow up with your leads and clients effectively using email, text messaging, as well as a dedicated phone line so that you can keep your business and your personal calls easily defined. Now, we love automation and we love small business, and we want to help you. So we invite you to go to bluecowmarketing.ca/automate and book a consult with us. Now, let's enjoy this episode. Yeah, and let's be frank, you're dealing with humans and human behavior and reactions, and for anyone to even come out and say, we can market your business and do these 5 things and you will get this result, is ludicrous to even think. Okay, here we are, episode number 45. We're going to be talking about risk. Now, business, if you're in business, it is a risk. It's the unknown. And that's what we want to talk about is, good risk, bad risk, all kinds of risk. And Jody, you came up with this topic. So I think you have a lot of risky questions to ask in this. I know nothing. Again, that seems to be our theme. I know nothing about what we're going to talk about until it actually happens.
Yeah, it makes it way more entertaining.
It's the risk
that
I
way.
take.
Okay, all right. I think firstly, risk is about adapting, right? So when you think about taking risk, I think there's that kind of assumption or negative association with it because, what stops you is fear. And if you know how to adapt and you learn to adapt, or you're not afraid of adaptation, then that completely eliminates that fear.
Mm-hmm, for sure. And if you've been in a traditional job, a lot of times it's trying to mitigate that risk or eliminate the risk or avoid risk and those type of things. But in a business, the only way you're going to grow is to take, risk or risky decisions. And there's a difference between, I think, taking risky decisions or taking risky chances that aren't calculated, where you don't know, what's going to happen in a negative way, right? It's you have to look at both sides. That if this fails, then what's my backup plan?
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean, even just before you make a decision, what good could come out of this versus what bad. And if the good outweighs the bad, then you take the risk, right? Like it really is a simple equation when it comes to that, and if you don't have kind of a contingency plan in place, if, it does turn out to be, the worst possible outcome, then you shouldn't really make that risk or take that risk either, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, we do a lot of stuff with content, and I think that's where we're going to really focus on is, we're not talking about, should you start a business or shouldn't you? I mean, if you haven't even decided to start one and you're listening to this podcast, you're really ahead of the game with it. But, a lot of times risk could be as easy as, do I post a video, or do I, start a podcast, or do I, take a position on a certain topic in a certain way. All those can be risks in different sizes, right? So, I mean, my question back to you is, have you seen or taken any risks in your life in the marketing side where you didn't know how it was going to turn out? Yeah,
definitely. I mean, every single idea that I have is, for any client in terms of social, it's trial and error, it's risk. Some videos are going to flop, and some posts that you don't really expect are, turn out to have, the most comments out of any post you've done. And you're like, okay, well, I'm going to keep going with this. So that risk was worth it. But the 500 other posts that I did that, weren't that sweet spot weren't. And I think that that's just acceptance. And now it's, not even a thought in my mind, I guess, when I come up with a new idea, like a contest for a client, which is something that I do often. And I've taken all kinds of different approaches based on, the different industry and, you know, the context of the actual situation and, you know, what we want to accomplish out of it. And I think honestly, marketing in general is just a trial and error. You know, it's based on failure, I guess.
Yeah, and let's be frank, you're dealing with humans and human behavior and reactions, you know, and for anyone to even come out and say, you know, we can market your business and do these 5 things and you will get this result, you know, is ludicrous to even think, right? I mean, people are always changing, you know, the market's always changing, you know, and what you've even tried this month may not work in 4 months or 6 months, right? You just got to keep trying, you know, you do those experiments. You know, in any type of even advertising, you know, we do what are called split tests is, you know, we put out 3 or 4 things and the one that performs the best, then we cut off the ones that aren't. And then we reiterate those ones that are doing best and try to improve on them, right? Each one is a risk. And, you know, I think the biggest learning that you can take from this is if you're going to do some kind of marketing for your business, which you should, you know, you need to be okay with losing sometimes, right? There's going to be some loss of time, some loss of revenue, or, you know, or money out of your business to just try it. But the more that you find out that doesn't work, the more you're left with the things that do work.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, the more you know about your target market or, you know, even just, you know, ruling out one thing that doesn't work is progress and it is a step in the right direction, right? And I know it's really hard to have that mindset sometimes, but, you know, where we're in marketing, that's the mindset we almost have to have. So we're used to it, but it's definitely harder said than done.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. You take a risk. Come on, just put it out there. It's easier. It's easier said than done.
Yeah.
There we go. Harder said than done. But
I knew it wasn't right, but anyways, we got there eventually. But yeah, I want to kind of circle back to the experimenting part, because I think that's so important with any business. You know, I feel like that really is at the center of every business is just experimenting. You know, you present your clients or your customers with a solution to their problem, and you have to play around with that. The first solution isn't going to be the best one. You know, and learning how to get your message out there. The marketing of your business, the first thing you come up with isn't going to be the best. You know, and when you do find the best one, it's not going to stay the best one.
No.
You know, so your product and your services are constantly adapting and you have to constantly change them and kind of adapt them to the changing market and to your changing demographic. So it really is all about experimentation.
And I think one thing when you said like the best one, you know, a lot of people will look at this as I'm going to try these 3 things and the best one is the best one. And I'm going to argue that point. It is not the best one. It is just better than those other 2, right? So now you take that what you called the best one and you try to make 2 more that are better than that one, right? So you're always trying to continually improve, right? And that's something that I've tried over the years. And there's been several times where it's just fallen flat on its face, and it was a risk, and you got to live with it. Yeah,
for sure. Now to get into the juicy questions.
Oh, great.
So I just want to know from your perspective as an actual business owner, you know, what's the biggest risk you took that actually ended up with a negative outcome? And, you know, what did you plan for that? Did you know, how to deal with it when it presented itself?
I mean, I'm fortunate enough to say that there hasn't been anything that's almost sunk in the business. There has been something that's taken the attention away from it. And it was several years ago. And there was a gentleman that worked for me. He was a good friend of mine. We were doing a lot of video stuff. And he had experience in the video transfer business, which means taking VHS or reel-to-reels and turning them on the DVDs. And he said, you know, when I worked for a company in Halifax, you know, this was big business for them. And it's pretty easy to do. So I thought, you know, here's an opportunity. Let's take a risk. Let's buy some equipment. Let's promote this. It kind of falls in line with what we're doing with video production. You know, we went to a home show and we put up a booth and everything, and you know, a lot of initial interest, but the sales never came in from it. So in the end, I put a lot of focus and energy that I took away from the main core of the business. And in the end decided, okay, this is going to work. About a year into it, and said, okay, we're just going to sell off the equipment and go back. So there was a loss of money, a loss of time. But, you know, when I look back and think about it, it might not have been the idea of that part not working. It might have been that the approach I took to it might not have been the best. right? I could have, if I really wanted to spend more time, what I needed to do was have somebody dedicated to that,
Right.
or somebody dedicated to keep the other side of the business going so I could focus on it, right? So
Right.
basically I created a whole new business with the exact same amount of time that I had to run my other one.
Right. Right. So what brought you to that final decision to kind of, you know, ditch that and kind of not look back?
I mean, it just came down to the amount of time it was taking for what it was coming out. It came down to the numbers. You look at, selling a video transfer for $20 and the amount of time for people to drop them off, and then you transfer them and edit them and put them on a DVD and give them back to them, to what the main core of the business was actually doing.
Right.
And it wasn't that enjoyable,
Yeah.
in the end. It seemed like a natural, hey, here's a way to just grow the business into another division. But in the end, I didn't have somebody that was passionate to continue it on.
Right.
So that's what it came down to.
Right. So, on top of the actual kind of numbers, looking at, is it, numerically worth it, when you look at the actual profit and what it's bringing in. But then there's also that aspect of, is this making you happier? Is this, what you view as success? Because it's not, just as simple as, am I making the most money? It really does come down to what you enjoy as well.
Absolutely. And just one that we're currently in right now has been, getting back into doing webinars and online training and group training. We held our first webinar 2 weeks ago, after about over 2 years of me actually doing one. And I went into it knowing it was not going to be a success in the way that I wasn't going to get like 100 people. I wasn't going to get like 10 new customers, anything from it. It was, in the first round, a way for me just to get back into the flow, test the systems, test the software. We had 6 people register, which was fine. I mean, if we had one person or even 0, I still would have went through the motions of doing it. And, knowing that, it was a way for me to get started. So it was we're in the initial phase. Now it's like, okay, what can we do next? And we're kind of changing the focus. So, I know that if I was to say, okay, green light, let's go, let's promote this, let's try to make clients, and we do at least 3 and we get nothing from it, then it's time to pull the plug and this isn't going to work. Right. So that's me looking at that risk and the amount of time and effort to put into it and say, okay, 3 goes, and then I'm not going to do it anymore.
Right. Okay. So you consistently refer to yourself as an ideas guy, which is 100% true. Almost every day you have a new thing or a new idea coming, and another opportunity to take a risk. So how do you kind of filter those out into the ideas that actually are worth it and become tangible?
Well, I don't think I have an exact science or way of doing it. I've been getting better at stopping myself in my tracks and trying to figure out, should I pursue this? But right. I mean, up until probably about 2 years ago, an idea will come to me in the middle of the day, and then the next thing I'm just off trying to build out that idea, right? And I'm just having that squirrel moment of jumping all over the place.
Right.
And now it's just looking at, is this something that I could legitimately see somebody needing first? If that's a yes, then it's like, okay, well, is it something that they're willing to pay for?
Right.
2, obviously we can't do it all for free. And then 3, how much time is it actually going to take before we can get it to that point where somebody's willing to pay for it and it's going to give them a result from it. I think also in business it's important for you to also have ideas that you want to do that are fun for you, that you're going to get the gratification out. And that's where there's certain things that I like to do every year or so, that is, not revenue generating, but it is enjoyment generating.
Yeah. I love that. Not revenue generating, but enjoyment.
Yeah.
Right on. Now, to kind of flip the question over, what's a risk you took that, you kind of had that weird gut feeling that, it was a really good idea and then it paid off in the end?
Well, not to say that I'm saying this because you're on the podcast, but for years I'd always wanted to hire somebody. And I just, I never really knew, how to fully take that leap with confidence. For one, it was, is the person going to, be a fit for the role? What's their motivation? I tried to put out ads before in years past, and, I'd get people from, an hour away who wanted to work, fully remotely. But they only wanted to do one aspect of it, or you could tell it was just a stepping stone. So, that risk of how much time do I put into this person and then have them like leave and go to something else, right? And then you're back to square one. So, when I decided to hire you, it was mainly, I wasn't looking for that first. I was looking for an intern as a part of a program. And then you said you were looking for employment. And then I started to look at programs. And the next thing was, could I afford it? And that was the biggest thing in that. And knowing to go into it that it's never going to be, revenue positive, in the first several months to even a year. It's an investment into that person before you can get them to that stage. Right. But I was lucky enough to qualify you for a program that covered a small percentage of your wage, which was a help. And I took that leap. And to be honest, when I made that decision that yes, there was a point of like, I hope this is going to work, right? Like I hope that this is a good fit. And to date, it's been a great fit. So, that was a risk that has paid off. I felt a lot less stress off of my back in certain areas. It allows me to focus on other stuff in the business, which again brings more stress in that area, but still it's stress that I enjoy.
Right. Well, I'm glad to know that I have been the biggest reward of the company. Might go to my head a bit, but all right. Well, that was pretty much everything that I wanted to touch on about risk. Did you have anything else?
I think just listening to this episode is, obviously you're probably in business, and a lot of times people will overanalyze, the risk of what they want to do. So let's just take, starting a podcast, because that's really kind of something that we're top of mind at the moment. But, I hear people say, I really should do a podcast. I really should do it. And, I don't know where to start. I don't want equipment. And I don't know, who I should interview or what kind of format and stuff. And I'm just like, just do it. Like, take out your phone, hit the audio app and record something, get yourself down and get it out there. You're searching for perfection is never going to get you to start. Right. And we call it like analysis paralysis, is the fact that you overanalyze so much that you can't make a decision to move forward. And the second kind of point is Strategic Coach was a great program in the US. I had a client who was very much an ideas guy. He's in the financial industry in Ontario. And he always come up with these ideas, and he went through that program and they implemented something called an impact filter. Anytime he has a new idea for the business or direction, he has to fill this out. Like what's the benefits, what's the negative, this, and then it goes to the whole team and they all have to sign off on this. Wow. Right. So they all can say, oh no, this is going to impact me negatively or positively. And then they make that decision based off of that. So you can't just like jump right away. You've got to have something in place. Right. So if you have another team member or an advisor, run the ideas across, in front of them would be helpful. Yeah,
for sure. And I've always been a big believer in teamwork because, the more minds you have, the more opposite opinions, the, more unique and probably beneficial the outcome is going to be, right? So.
Yeah, and one last thing just popped in my head too is it's not necessarily always decisions for you to do new things in your business. Taking on certain clients may be a risk. Right. So understanding what are those red flags with those potential people that you're doing consults with, where you're like, okay, if we brought them on, that would be a negative impact to how we work. So that's a risk. And then just making those decisions, very quickly that say you're not a fit. Let's move on.
Right. Yeah, for sure.